The last businessman who ran for governor, Dick DeVos. If I can go around the table here, were you all DeVos voters or Granholm voters last time around?
So you want to take my place?
Yeah.
No answer?
I'll actually answer that.
Yeah, okay.
DeVos. And I think just because, number one, he was a business person first and not a politician. And then secondly, he said he would not even take a paycheck, which just amazed me that somebody who knows how to run a business and has done so successfully and wasn't going to even take a paycheck, why we didn't vote him in.
Well, Cheryl Freeborough, that reminds me of Rick said, being a successful business person and then wanting to do this, which is such a challenge, means that there's a devotion to Michigan. And I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Detroit, and the devotion to Michigan is what is so important versus the devotion to politics in general. Yeah. And as a business owner, to switch and say you're going to take no pay or you're going to walk away from doing business that you're very successful at and become governor, which is a huge challenge, it just amazes me.
It says a lot.
And the endorsements, that is another thing that concerns me. We've been having conversations over the last weeks over the endorsements that the local Chamber of Commerces have come out with. One chamber only endorsed one person, one had one from each party, and their processes I'm not so comfortable with. And I think that's a shame that they do those kind of endorsements because it hurts really quality people that don't get to hear what you really have to say.
I would have to agree with that. I gave him my vote. And the biggest reason, and it goes back to the business experience. If we don't have small business, if we don't have the core taking care of the state, we're not going to have a state. And you can have all the programs, you can have all the government handouts, you can have everything in the world, but you got to take care of the core. And small business is the core of the state of Michigan.
It's 98%.
That's it.
That's
that
huge.
Has to be. And when I say taken care of, not in a social way, but in a tax-friendly, business-friendly environment that welcome people to come here.
I'm Peggy Doty from Doty Mechanical. I have to agree. I've always been intrigued when a business person decides to run for public office. And for one, I think, are you crazy? Because you're just throwing your...
Let's let him answer that.
But on the other side, Governor Granholm has indicated that she didn't have legislative experience, and that's been one of her drawbacks. So then it comes back to you. How do you feel you can cross that bridge and actually reach across the aisles if that's what's necessary to actually employ your plan?
And I think I can reach across the aisles. That's clearly the attitude I'm bringing into this because, again, business people aren't given credit by people in Lansing for the negotiating skills we have, our ability to work with people, because quite often I'll hear it from people in Lansing. They'll say, you're a CEO type. You just tell people what to do. And the one I like to ask people is tell me a situation where you tell your customers what to do. And if you're building a successful business, you have to negotiate those relationships. And as I thought about it, I actually go back into an experience at Gateway that really highlights the very toughest situation you can possibly face. And at Gateway, we actually had to do patent licenses. We had to license patents in for technology to have the rights to sell our products. And some of the companies we had to license from were IBM, Compaq, Dell. Companies that fundamentally wanted to see us out of business. Mm-hmm. And I led those negotiations. I did those for many years. And I negotiated with them fair commercial arrangements between parties that essentially, I'm using the nicest term I can use, really, really disliked each other. And we were able to succeed in that because, again, you set the facts out and you understand there's a common ground basis. The other thing in Lansing that drives me crazy right now, and you may have seen it when you get a chance to watch them on TV, is you watch them in the chambers on their BlackBerries or how they emailed somebody and to say, we don't like this, we're negotiating this out. And it's like, what happened to common sense in terms of people relationships? If I got an issue with someone, I'm going to go sit down with them, look them in the eye, especially when they're in the same building or across the street. I'm not going to do it on my BlackBerry.
From a guy who ran a computer company.
Right.
You gave us technology and then demoted. We'll continue with more of the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap with candidate Rick Snyder right after this.
Rick, we sometimes get Facebook questions that come into the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap, and I have one that happens to come from my daughter. And I want to read it to you. It's Karen Doty Linton, the teacher, and her question is, I'd love to hear Rick Snyder's viewpoint on education funding. In addition, I would like to hear why... Oh, Facebook just went blank on me. In addition, I'd like to hear why we should trust his promises. Everyone says education is important, but the follow-through is always lacking.
Yeah, I'll answer the second part first. Why you can trust my promises is I'm very proud of my track record. And if you go talk to people that I've done business with, the starting point of anything you do in your life is sometimes they'll say, well, I'm a nerd, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that, but it starts with integrity. And that's something you have to earn over time, and I've built that over decades, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm viewed as a stand-up person. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. And you don't make promises you can't keep, and you just work hard on that. And I've done it my whole life, and I'm going to continue that process. On the question of education, to put it in the simplest sense, I think we have a fundamentally flawed discussion in Lansing. I actually think it's a terrible discussion, because the whole discussion in Lansing is about funding levels. It's all about this funding level or that funding level. What's the point of our education system? The point of having an education system is to educate our kids. Where's that issue in this? Where's the measurement of success? No one's talking about what do we need to do to get each child in our schools a great education each and every year. That's gotten lost in this discussion. I want to step back a couple steps to say that's the issue that matters. And then the question becomes is how do you measure that? Now, test scores are only part of that. In my view, each student should have a portfolio work that travels with them. Their papers, their reports, a way to really evaluate are they succeeding. And then you reverse engineer from there. You say, what do you need to do now to reward the best teachers, to get the best teachers in place? How do you help teachers that are struggling succeed? Or how do you do other corrective measures? How do you do the cultural athletic stuff? How do you do the frontline things the best way possible? And then, just like in a business, how do you minimize the overhead, the things behind the scenes that aren't frontline, to bring down the cost, to be as efficient as possible? And then how do you fund the system? That's the way we should be analyzing our education system, not the way we're doing it today.
Rick, did you consider running as an independent?
No.
You'd never thought
I've
about
been a proud Republican my whole life. I mean, I go back, one comment I give people is actually as a precinct delegate in college. So I'm hoping to go 2-0 here, folks.
Did you have political heroes?
I worked on campaigns, and I'm a big mentorship person. And I try to find attributes of people that you can really say are good role models. And I think if you look at some of our past Republican governors, there were a number of good attributes to three of them. George Romney was a business person. If you go back, he was a successful business person that was a good governor of the state. Governor Milliken, he was a great governor at getting people to work together. He had a track record of getting people to work across the aisles, and then the environmental area in particular is very successful about protecting our long-term legacy in the state. And then Governor Engler, he got stuff done. You may not have agreed them all the time, but results happen. So if you look at those different attributes, those are all things I hope to say I'm going to do.
Have you spent time talking to Governor Engler or Governor Milliken, asking their advice?
Governor Milliken's been the most open of the group. Actually, I had lunch with him last week.
Really?
Yeah, it was a great event up in Traverse City. We were campaigning in northern Michigan, and so I just contacted him, and we had a nice lunch. And you can learn stuff from these gentlemen. It's wonderful.
Jim Trebilcock, we'll get your question here. If we run short, we'll get the answer after the break.
Okay. Hi, Rick. My question really revolves around your value for budgeting in the communities. It sounds like a great idea. I'm not quite sure how fundamentally that would work. Could you sort of explain that?
Minute and a half.
Yeah, it's value for money budgeting, which is basically redoing the budget concept as you would in a business. So the idea here is you go much more transparent and open with the governor and legislature actually soliciting citizen input. Town halls, different things. What are the priorities of government? What do we really want to accomplish that are measurable, meaningful, tangible results? Not just spending money. And then you sit there and say, these are the outcomes we want. What are the strategies to deliver those outcomes? Who are the best people to do them? And then you go measure the real results, just like you would in a business, a closed-loop system with accountability and measurements in a transparent fashion. So value for money is fundamental. The other piece is to go to a 2-year budget cycle to make it clear and obvious for longer terms. Like the schools are suffering terribly because of 1-year budget cycles, and it makes you think longer term. The last thing I'll add is the state of Washington adopted this methodology several years ago. They faced a $2.4 billion budget gap back in 2003, and they put in the system. They called it priorities of government. They closed that budget gap. They went out and polled independents, Democrats, and Republicans. They all supported the process. Let's just go do it.